Did the process of ratifying by conventions hold true throughout the rest of our history when we look at the amendments that have been passed, all 27 of them? How were they passed, by convention or by legislatures?
They've been passed through Congress because that has been the more expedient way to pass through amendments. Because
but a ratification, I'm talking about.
The ratification of amendments. Were all passed through Congress rather than through the state legislatures, because they would individually have to have fights in each of the legislators to pass that through. So it was generally seen as easier to go through Congress, and once it got to Congress, there was usually national consensus by that point anyway.
Well, you also have to reference that there is that provision that they have 3/4 of the states to ratify the amendments, and they realize that the conventions, as Randy said, would not be the proper course to take for amendments to the Constitution because of how long it would take. The reason why the framers realized that conventions would be necessary at the time was because of the secrecy that the Constitution was drafted in. So they realized at the time that the convention best suited the drafting of the Constitution, but where it came to the amendments, that through that convention, it would take way too long.
And they certainly couldn't go.
That's a very pat answer. I mean, would you be comfortable? Oh, well, we will never know, will we? Thank you.
Well, I'd like to thank you for a very spirited and energized conversation about the Constitution this morning. I thought you had a very well-developed and well-organized opening statement, and that it was very clear where you stood in response to the positions and the evidence that you offered in support of your position.
I think in your opening statement, you were very strong on philosophy. You looked at that very hard. Social contract theory was mentioned several times. I like your mention of Leonard Levy. He's one of the great historians of the Bill of Rights. So he's often not mentioned, but I think it's important that we do recognize his work. I like the analogy between the amendment process and the Electoral College, that they're ad hoc bodies to address a single issue, and there's benefit to that, to avoid possible collusions going on afterwards or before. There were some problems, though, with the endorsement by Congress. One of the reasons why the Congress didn't endorse the Constitution, the Federalists wanted that, but there was opposition by a handful of anti-Federalists. And Federalists wanted a bandwagon. They didn't want to show any opposition whatsoever, and they met in secret in Congress. So there was a deal that was made, and that was the handful of anti-Federalists, including Richard Henry Lee, who proposed the Bill of Rights. All of their objections would be stricken from record, and the Constitution would go to the states without approbation. But the adept politicians that the Federalists were, they worded their resolution saying the unanimous vote of Congress, giving the illusion, the impression that they were unanimously in favor. Washington, when he heard about this from James Madison, said that it was good that they did that because most people can't see behind can't peep behind the curtain and see what really happened. The other political side that you didn't get on the conventions, you were very, very strong on the philosophical side, but just add the numbers. If you're going to legislatures, you've got to get passage, got to go through 24 different bodies. There are 11 bicameral legislatures, and there are 2 unicameral. If you go to conventions, you only have 1 in each state. So it's a lot easier to get approval of 9 states by getting 9 conventions, rather than most likely would take you 18 bodies to get your 9 states if you go through the state legislatures. So that was a practical concern, and there's no doubt that these framers here that we so much admire for their philosophical and intellectual progress, they were fantastic politicians, no doubt about that. And then on the amendments, You're right in that the amendments were proposed by Congress in all the time, but they were ratified in every case but one by state legislatures. Only one time did they have conventions to ratify an amendment to the Constitution. And that was to get rid of prohibition. Would have been impossible to have done that by state legislatures. But they've always used the opposite of the process that the framers used in ratifying the Constitution, by using the legislatures to adopt the amendments that were proposed. I greatly like the handling of pseudonyms. You did a terrific job there, especially when you were mentioning that the personalities, keep personalities out, and you likely, Melissa says that you like Publius used. What would the people of New York think as they found out that that was written by Alexander Hamilton? In their judgment, not a man of the people, but they still enjoyed what they were reading. But most of them voted for Antipas to the convention. You did a very good job.
You did a great job. I loved listening to you, the sort of the seamless handoffs, and it wasn't, and there was real substance to your answers, and this is tough stuff, and that's incredibly impressive. I don't know if troubled's the right word. I was struck by your unanimity on the anonymity issue. It's an article of faith among newspapers that they will not publish anonymous, not only won't they publish anonymous letters, but they won't publish letters that they can't verify the identity of the author. And there are all sorts of ethical rationales for not letting people make assertions of fact, give opinions without, actually signing the letter. That's now an issue on the internet as to whether that should be allowed. You can go, different way. I mean, I think you can make arguments on either side, but I would have liked to thought more recognition of the potential, not only ethical issues, but it's very cynical if you think about it. Here you had aristocratic people not wanting people to know that this Constitution is being supported by aristocratic people, so they sign it with, a name that's just, it's like when an organization, a political organization, puts fairness in its name. Whatever else you know about them, they're probably not very fair. And I think that's the other side of that issue. And but in any event, we could talk about this a long time, and it's very interesting stuff. And I enjoyed it very much. And congratulations.